Hello, everyone. Welcome to the program. My name is William Hemsworth. It's great to be with you again today. I'm excited to have my guest. She's an award-winning author, speaker, and she's host of Ave Explores. And we'll talk about her other job title in just a moment. Katie Prejean McGrady, how are you doing today?
Great. Thanks for having me, William.
Great. So as we record this, it's March 1st, and that's a big day. Maybe you can tell us what's going on in your life today.
Yeah. So I never thought I would say this, but I began my daily radio program with the Catholic channel, Sirius XM 129, today, actually. So from 1 to 3 Central, 2 to 4 East, you get me on the airwaves on channel 129. And as I tell my husband, in the past, I would get in trouble for talking too much in school, but now somebody's paying me to do it. So take that, teachers who used to shush me. And I'm really excited. It'll be a lot of fun.
So what kind of things do you plan on covering on that show?
All sorts of stuff. I mean, we want to really do a kind of a flyover of Catholic life. The Catholic channel is very much geared towards faithful, passionately Catholic people, along with folks who are just, scrolling through Sirius XM and happen to find us and want to know a little bit more about what does it mean to be Catholic and what does it look like to live the Catholic faith day by day. So that's, we'll have segments on church history. I plan on doing a segment every Monday about what we're cooking in our kitchen at home and the meals that we're feeding our family, and really trying to be relatable Catholic content and I'll happily admit this, from a mom's perspective. I have 2 kids under the age of 4. My husband works, I work. What does that look like? How do we teach our kids what it means to be Catholic? How do we handle spontaneous stomach bugs and everything in between?
Yeah, and those always come up, don't they? We're at the strangest times.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I still can't believe that it's March 2021 because it still feels like March 2020, to be entirely honest.
Yeah, I don't feel like Lent ever ended.
Yeah. It's just been one consistent Lent with some good moments in between in that crazy Lent. But yeah, it's very strange to me that I haven't set foot on a plane in over 350 days. And I'm kind of okay with it. It used to be my everyday reality. I was flying somewhere, and now I've just been home and I really love it.
Well, good. Enjoy the time with the little ones and hope everything is well. Now, Ave Explores, you have an interesting series right now, Catholicism around the world. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about that series and what you've learned so far.
Yeah. So we at Ave Explores, we try to take a look at topics that would be relevant to faithful everyday Catholics. The Sirius XM show kind of fits in perfectly with that. And so we're doing a look at the church globally. So what does the church look like in my zip code in Southwest Louisiana? But what does it look like in Ireland? What does it look like in Africa? What's going on with the church in South America? We have a great interview from last week on the podcast with a friend of mine, Brenda Noriega. She's an immigrant to the United States from Mexico. And she talks a lot about how different the church was in comparison to her experience in Mexico versus when she came to the States, and how much involvement the laity has in the church in America. And, I think I always knew that the laity were probably more involved here than anywhere else in the world, but it was really fascinating to hear it from somebody who has seen the church somewhere else and has now lived and worked in the church in the United States. So we're really doing this cool kind of comparing. What does the church look like here? What does the church look like there? What's common and what's unique? And in the process, I think it's helping me at least appreciate my faith more. I love my church in Little Lake Charles, Louisiana, even more after having gone to all these other places around the world, even if it is just virtually, or, in the past when it was traveling, it always felt like I was coming home, but yet at the same time, never felt like I was away from home when I would be in a Catholic church somewhere else, whether around the world or around the country. And so that's really what we're trying to bring attention to.
Now, in the first video, you talked about a cool story when you were in Rome learning. Can you share that story with us? I thought that was enlightening.
Yeah. So I had the opportunity to go to Rome in March of 2018. So 3 years ago now, which is crazy, to serve as a delegate for the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops to the pre-synod gathering of youth and young adults, which is a mouthful. It's a fancy way of saying it was Catholic summer camp with young adults and wine. And we were talking about the problems and the challenges that youth and young adults face and how the church can respond to them. So I'm sitting in this room with people from literally around the world, everyone from Hungary, from Germany, from China, from the Philippines. My roommate was from China, actually, and she and I grew very close and still keep in touch, which is an interesting thing to learn about what it means to be Catholic in a communist country. And so we're all sitting there and we're taking notes and we're learning about these kind of a flyover of the conversation, just very general. And I looked around the room and we were all taking notes in our own language. We're talking in English because it was an English working group, but everybody was taking notes in their native language. And it was such a unifying moment. Same question, same discussions, but we were each processing in a unique way. And then also offering our own unique experiences of the church from where we were. And it just made me feel so, I don't know, I was very comforted in that moment. I was very homesick. I had left my less than 1-year-old daughter and my husband and had gotten on a plane to go do this very important job, but at the same time missed home. And in that moment, I felt more at home than I think I've ever been when I've been away from my physical home, because I felt so united to my fellow Catholic brothers and sisters from across the globe. And we hope to do a little bit of that in this series.
Okay. Why is that unity important? As a convert, I grew up in churches that were all on their own. And I think converts understand, but maybe the everyday person in the pew doesn't understand why that's important.
I think it's two things, William. I think the first is that we recognize that our church, no matter how different it might be in different places, is one, right? One holy Catholic and apostolic. Right. So that one and that Catholic, it is a together church that is universally diverse. And it brings I think a level of security in some sense that I really can go anywhere in the world and step into a Catholic church, might not speak the language, might not recognize some of the art, but I know the readings are going to be the same. And I know the theme of the homily, even if I can't understand it, it's probably going to generally be the same if they're preaching on the gospel like they're supposed to be. And I'm also going to recognize the markers of the liturgy and still be able to receive the Eucharist. And there's great comfort in knowing that. I think the other big thing is there's comfort in knowing that my worship is unified around the world, but there's also comfort in knowing that I'm not alone in my belief system, and that, what I believe that might be unpopular in the secular world, or what might be considered bigoted or isolationist, I guess is a way to put it. What might be by all terms of the world to be something that is outdated and unnecessary and stupid is actually something that a billion other people believe. And that I'm not alone in that belief. So, and I'm not even talking like the culturally, the touchstone issues like abortion, for example. I'm more talking like that Mary is my mom. Like a billion other people believe that. And that's comforting to me to know that I'm not this crazy person who just likes God's mom, but like other people also have this intimate relationship with her. And I could talk to them about that. So there's comfort in our beliefs are the same, and there's comfort in the worship is the same. And I can go anywhere and find a Catholic church and I won't be so alone there.
Now, in your conversations, I mean, you've had conversations with people in North America, Canada, obviously, which is part of North America, Africa. What things have you discovered about the church, and maybe what's important to one segment and maybe not so much to another?
Yeah. So one of the conversations I loved having was with my friend Samuel. He is a soon-to-be ordained priest in Kenya. And we met at the pre-synod. So the advantage of going to that pre-synod was meeting a lot of these people that we got to interview for the series, because I know them and we're Facebook friends and we've all stayed in touch. And I asked him that question, what's unique about the church in Africa? It's the question I asked everybody that comes on the show and that wrote for us. And he started telling this story about his ministry while he's waiting to be ordained has been to just visit people. And that's a huge part of the Kenyan culture is this community aspect of going to someone's home and just being with them, listening to them, not watching the clock, not worrying about how long this particular conversation is going to take, just sitting and being. And he visited this one particular woman, and it was about 3.5, 4 hours before he looked up at the clock and realized they'd just been sitting there visiting. Nobody had visited her in a while due to COVID. He, was willing to take the risk to go visit her, knowing that he'd been isolated and she'd been isolated. And he brought that to the point of it's very much the same when it comes to worship in the church in Kenya. Is they don't stare at the clock the same way that, say, we do in America, where yesterday our 7 a.m. mass went like 10 minutes over, and I looked at my husband and I was like, we're not going to get the good donuts. Like in my head, I'm like keeping time, knowing that the good donut shop runs out of pink donuts at like 8:30, and we're probably not going to make them. And yet in Kenya, they're sitting there for 4 hours praising and worshiping and communing with one another. I mean, the procession in an African church mass, and Africa, of course, is a very large country, but in general, the procession oftentimes takes upwards of 30 minutes. Because there's dance and it's not just bringing the bread and the wine, but people from the community bring things to offer at the altar. And to think that 30 minutes to make an offering to the table of the Lord is a normal thing for them. I love that.
Yeah.
I don't know that that would work in the United States of America, but I'm really, really glad that it's happening there and that I can appreciate that and that I know that that's part of it. Another really fascinating thing was to learn about different areas of focus in the social justice conversations that happen. So we interview a friend of mine from Samoa, the Samoan Islands, and he is on the front lines of fighting climate change, which, you know, you talk to people in the States and either climate change is the thing that's going to destroy us or it's made up. There's very, very little do you find people who just like, oh, I'm going to recycle it. I'm going to try to keep my AC at a reasonable temperature and like do my part to not destroy the ozone layer anymore. Mm-hmm. And here's Joe, his island is literally falling into the ocean. And so he is on the front lines of creating resources and commentary and talking to leaders at the UN. And his faith drives him to do that because he recognizes the command from God to care for our common home. And listening to him talk about that, you know, in the States right now, our social justice fight is often abortion or the death penalty or ending racism. And those are the necessary conversations we should be having. Well, for him, the necessary conversation is climate change. And I loved that we're both oriented to fighting for the common good, but coming at it from two different issues. That was hugely comforting as a Catholic.
Yeah. So what would you say to someone in the U.S. who, I don't want to say they're U.S. oriented, but maybe they think everything with the church has to revolve around the U.S. Mm-hmm. I see that on Twitter a lot. That's why I asked.
Oh yeah. Yeah. So yeah, I think Americans have American exceptionalism runs deep within us, sometimes for better or worse, right? We often think as Americans, and perhaps this is media driven, perhaps this is just because we are a global superpower in a lot of areas, that it's all about us, that anything that comes from the Vatican is obviously being directed to us in Western American culture. And that's just not the case. I mean, we saw this with Pope Francis's commentary around LGBTQ individuals deserving a family. In America, we heard that and said, oh, he wants them to get married. Well, no, in reality, he was talking about a very real situation in Brazil where oftentimes homosexual children are outcasts of their family. And so he was talking about moms and dads continuing to love their children even as they work through their same-sex attraction. So if we only ever look at things from this American perspective, we take things out of context or we misunderstand a bit of news that's probably not even about us. I don't know if that's partially because we want to be the center of attention, if it's partially because, again, the media has convinced us that we're the center of attention. I'll give an example of just this on the global scale outside of the church. So in the fall of 2019, I went to England and Australia. So England twice and Australia once. So I was spending a lot of time abroad. And, you know, I have an American accent. So, of course, the first thing people wanted to know, like they would ask me what was going on with the election. Of course, if you remember, at that particular moment, things were quite fraught in our country with the election, even though we were still months and months away from when people actually cast their vote. Our president at the time would say volatile things. The Democrats had not yet created, you know, their person, their candidate. So there was a lot of, they would legitimately ask me like what I, as an American, thought about our American political status, right? And so then I would ask them, well, what do you think about it? And literally every single person, they're like, well, we don't think about it. And so then I'm like, well, why are you asking me about it? And it was truly, they were just curious. Like, are we as obsessed with this situation as the media makes it appear we are? Because they certainly weren't as obsessed with it. And versus like, I would have assumed everybody was on pins and needles watching our American political circumstances. And that's just not the case with the people that I met. They knew about how tense things were in the States, but they really could care less. And I think that sometimes the same is true of the church. We as American Catholics need to recognize that it's not always about us, that oftentimes we have access to things and resources available to us that are far different than what other people in the world have. And we don't even realize how good we have it. And to maybe like take a breather and stop screaming about things that to be quite honest, I mean, our friends in China would love to have any kind of mass, Novus Ordo, TLM, like whatever it is. And yet we're fighting about our liturgical preferences versus they just would like to have a priest be able to say mass and not get arrested. I think hopefully this series will make people aware of those global challenges and make us a little more appreciative of the church that we have.
And I think it will, especially you just mentioned with the situation in China. And I mean, brothers and sisters going to mass in some places in Africa with the risk of their life, really.
Yeah.
I mean, we have it really good here.
We do. We do. I did an interview with John Lindblom, who is writing his doctorate right now, his dissertation on the church in China. It's a very simplified version of it, but we talked for 30 minutes for the podcast about the situation, about the cultural revolution that happened in the 50s and 60s, about how there's the underground church and there's the official registered church, and how the two are sort of in tension, but at the end of the day, they are our Catholic brothers and sisters no matter what. And they desire the same things we do, right? A freedom to worship, a freedom and a hope to receive the Eucharist. Hearing that, again, that reminder of, I want to receive the Eucharist, I want them to be able to receive the Eucharist. We're united in that Eucharistic sacrifice. Right. It gives me great hope that I will be a better Catholic, knowing that there are people around the world who believe and worship in the same way I do, and hopefully have the same freedom to do so.
Great. So what's up next? Any other series planned for Ave Explores?
Yeah. So we've got our next series starting in mid-April, and it will be on faith and science and the relationship between the church and scientific discoveries, scientific pursuits. We're building out the program now, but we hope to have interviews with an astronaut. We're trying to get Brother Guy from the Vatican Observatory. Some really awesome things coming that I think will be encouraging to folks to look at that. Let's call it what it is, the tension that sometimes seems to exist between the church and science, but also recognizing that relationship and that pursuit of faith and reason.
No, very important subject, as is this one with Catholicism around the world, because we're a worldwide community, everyone. So we have to realize that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So Katie, where can they find your podcast, listen to it, read the articles, etc.?
Yeah. So everything is available at avemariapress.com. We have a little tab up at the top that says free resources. So you just click on that. You find every week. So it's 4 weeks. You can sign up for the emails, or you can just go straight to the website. 2 podcasts a week while the series is going on. Facebook Live conversations on Tuesdays at noon Central Time on the Ave Maria Press page. An article every week, social media exclusives on Instagram and Facebook. But it's all housed at avemariapress.com.
Oh, great. Well, Katie, thanks for coming on, taking some time with everything going on, and best of luck on your new show that debuts today.
Thanks so much.
All right. God bless.